So good morning and welcome to Kitty Talks. We share inspirational life stories that empower you to create yours. And today's story is no different. I read this wonderful woman's book on holiday this year with my husband. I laughed, I cried, I resonated with it so much. So I want to introduce you to the beautiful Clare Pooley, who is an author and she is also has a blog called Mummy Was a Secret Drinker, which I just think is such a cool name. So welcome, Claire, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to meet you.
Yeah, and we've just had such a wonderful chat before Claire came on air. So I know you guys are really going to enjoy this conversation. We're going to be talking all about purpose and how your purpose will unveil itself to you in the sort of most interesting ways. But Claire, would you mind sharing with my audience a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing in the world at the moment?
Yes. I guess who I am now comes back to who I was 4 years ago, because, back 4 years ago, I was drinking way too much. I spent 20 years in advertising, and I quit advertising when my third child was born. And I was a stay-at-home mum, which was, fabulous in many ways, but also, as you'll know, very, very hard. And I would drink a large glass of wine at the end of the day to relax. And that large glass of wine became a whole bottle, until eventually I was drinking a bottle of wine every day and more at weekends. And I added it up one day, which I tried not to do, to be honest. And it was about 10 bottles of wine a week I was drinking.
Wow.
Obviously way too much. So I quit drinking and I started writing a blog, which I called, as you said, Mummy Was a Secret Drinker. And that blog led to the book, The Sober Diaries, and that led to, I did a TED Talk, and I do a lot of sort of public speaking now, and I'm now a novelist. My first novel is coming out next year, which is so exciting. So, yes, in a long-winded way, that's where I am now. I'm a writer, a blogger, and a speaker.
Fantastic. And I bet you could never have imagined that life would turn out like this, sort of 4 years ago.
No, 4 years ago, I was in a really bad way. So, I was completely stuck in a rut, and, I couldn't work out quite how I got to where I was in my life, because I'd always been so energetic and enthusiastic and ambitious, and, and I was in this very small space, not really achieving very much at all. And I felt I wasn't a good role model for my children, and I wasn't even a very good mother. I was quite grumpy and shouty a lot of the time. And because of the amount I was drinking, I was 2 stone overweight. I wasn't sleeping. I was a really bad insomniac. And, I was anxious a lot of the time. I spent a lot of the time just feeling, I was the sort of person who used to do really amazing things. I was on the board of a big advertising agency when I was 30, and I traveled all over the world, and I'd done all sorts of stuff. And yet, I get anxious when the phone rang.
Wow.
And how did I get here? How did I become this small, anxious person? So yeah, I wasn't in a good way.
And am I correct in thinking, because I was in the recruitment industry and that was booze fueled, and I presume advertising was a bit like that as well, was it?
Yeah, I think it's partly why I went into it, to be honest. So, I came of age in the era of Absolutely Fabulous and and Bridget Jones and the Ladette, and I thought that it was absolutely our feminist duty to keep up with the lads and to play hard and work hard, and advertising. I was in account management, so my job was client management, and that involved huge expense budget and lots of boozy lunches and evenings out at the latest big restaurants and clubs and what have you. And yeah, I didn't know anyone back then who didn't drink. I can't think of one person I knew who didn't drink.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it sounds like you and I have got sort of similar paths in that respect. And it was just our culture. You'd take a client out for lunch, you'd entertain them. Alcohol was all really big part of that. And I think when you're so immersed in a culture like that, you don't even realize that that's I didn't know it. Like you said, I didn't know anyone who didn't drink either. You know, everybody did.
You know what I didn't realize until really recently, and this makes me sound really stupid, but I really didn't think of alcohol as a drug, you know, because it's so ubiquitous and because everybody drinks. I didn't think it was a drug like any other drug. But it is, you know, and you get addicted in the same way you get addicted to any other drug, and your tolerance increases in the same way as it does to any other drug. So, you know, but that really didn't cross my mind back then. You know, I just thought it was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the other thing we don't necessarily question until we become a bit more conscious, is because everybody, your parents drink, you know, most families drink. It's so socially acceptable that I think we start drinking at such a young age as well. You know, kids, sort of teenagers, they don't know any different.
And social media doesn't help. You know, there's a whole mummy drinking culture, which, you know, I totally bought into. So, you know, I think that, you know, for a long time, mothers used to have this terrible weight of expectation. They had to be absolutely perfect. And, you know, a while back, things started changing, and we started acknowledging that motherhood was hard and that, you know, it was very difficult to be perfect. And we became much more supportive as mothers. But what we all, you know, laughed about was the role that alcohol played in that. So the idea was, gosh, motherhood is hard, but thank goodness I've got my you know, my mummy
glass
juice,
of wine, yeah,
my little helper, my wine o'clock at the end of the day. And, you know, social media is absolutely filled with jokes about, you know, how wine is absolutely necessary as a partner in motherhood. And I totally bought into that. And it wasn't until, you know, very recently that I realized that actually, you know, alcohol was making motherhood really hard.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it, you know, it's such, now you're out of it, it's probably really obvious. But when you're in it, it's, you know, it's very difficult to sort of see the wood for the trees, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk me through your decision to quit drinking, because that's a huge decision and you took it by yourself. You know, because I really want, you know, our listeners are women predominantly, you know, they're all on that journey to discovering their purpose. You know, they want to make a difference in the world. But alcohol, I'm sure, is still part of many people's lives that are listening to this. And I'm sure they'll resonate with what you're about to say. So what was the sort of final straw? How did you kind of go, right, this is it now?
Actually, I have to tell you, it was the day after my birthday party 4 years ago, and this is actually the first page in my book, and I described that I woke up with an awful hangover, as you can imagine, the day after a party, and I went down to dinner, and my kids were all, you know, making a real racket. So one of them was doing her clarinet practice, and the others were watching something on YouTube, and there was, you know, and I had a crashing headache. And, you know, I knew that the only thing that was going to make me feel better was having some alcohol. And, you know, but I had this hard and fast rule that I never drank before midday. And that was sort of something that I'd never, ever broken. But on that morning, I looked in the cupboard, and there was about half an inch of wine left at the bottom of a bottle. And I thought, oh, that's a sign. You know, I haven't finished the whole bottle, which means that, you know,
I can have it.
that wine has my name on it. And I poured it into a mug so the children wouldn't notice, and I drank it, and it did help the headache. But it was, as I said, it was only 11 o'clock in the morning, and then I looked at the mug, and it had written on it, "The world's best mum."
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So awful that I never drank again. So, you know, it had been a long time coming, and there were many things that led up to that moment, but that was the straw that broke the camel's back, if you like.
Yeah, I can imagine it's kind of ironic, isn't it, to hold that in your hands and look at it. Oh, and then of course the Sober Diaries was born. So, or was it the blog? Sorry, first of all, the blog was.
Well, I mean, I tried giving up before, and I'd given up for a month at a time, and I'd given up for sort of weeks here and weeks there, but I'd never been able to stick to it. So, you know, I wanted to do something different. And I thought, well, if I write about what I'm going through, and I sort of remembered back to when I was much younger and I'd written a diary, and I thought, well, writing a diary might help. And then I thought, well, this is the 21st century. I should do it online. And I'd never done anything like blogging before. So I just Googled something like blogging for dummies and managed to work out how to set up a rudimentary blog, which I called Mummy Was a Secret Drinker. And I wrote every single day, effectively just an online diary, what I was going through and some of the research that I'd looked up and how I was feeling and what I'd learned about alcohol, because I did a huge amount of reading. And, that blog, I didn't advertise it at all because I was so embarrassed about the whole thing that I blogged under a pseudonym. I called myself Sober Mummy, and I was terrified that anyone would know what I was doing. So I didn't do any advertising, but yet within a year, I'd had nearly 1 million hits. And
wow.
People all over the world found this blog and started saying, yes, that's me too. And I thought I was the only person who felt like that until I discovered the blog. And I think writing it all down helped me sort out my own head, but it also kept me accountable. I felt that if I started drinking again, I'd be letting down a whole load of other people as well. And it's a great reminder, because I could, your mind plays funny tricks on you when you're an addict, in that, it's easy to look back and remember the good days and not the bad days. And being able to read back, onto the early days of my blog reminded me what it felt like and the fact that I really didn't want to ever go there again. So it was very helpful.
And probably something you advise for people who are in that transition of giving up alcohol. Would you advise a blog is a really great almost support mechanism for people?
Yes, I would say two things. One is writing everything down is really helpful. So even if you don't do a blog, writing a journal really helps for all the reasons I talked about. But the other thing that really helps is community. And, facing any problem alone is really hard. And it's very easy to feel isolated and feel like you're the only person who's ever been in this position. So finding a community is great. And in the old days, Alcoholics Anonymous was the only community out there, whereas now there are so many different options. So, one I really recommend is Club Soda, which is a Facebook group. And there are thousands of people on Club Soda who are all quitting drinking together. And, you feel like you're, one of a great crowd. And soberistas.com is another one. But there are lots and lots of options, so you can find the right community for you. And in fact, there's a fabulous TED Talk by Johann Hari called Everything You Thought You Knew About Addiction Was Wrong. And he ends that TED Talk by saying the opposite of addiction is connection, which I think is a really powerful thought. And actually finding like-minded people is really the way through.
And I would totally concur with what you're saying, because, who we surround ourselves with is who we become. I think that's the other thing that's challenging for people, is when your social life revolves around alcohol, or, as kids we grow, or we talk about work environments. Like I remember being in my work environment, I just didn't know anybody who didn't drink. I literally didn't know anybody, and who was I going to be friends with? Who was I going to hang out with? I think, so finding a community, whatever you want to achieve, whether it's fitness, not drinking, finding your purpose, making sure you're surrounding yourself with people who are in that same conversation, so you don't feel alone. Because I think as human beings, we need to have a community.
And I think what's changing is, I always used to think that the non-drinking community would be a whole load of really sad people in church halls, sort of drinking sweet tea and dredging over the sort of, the bad old days. And, the truth is that now there's a whole zeitgeist around the alcohol-free community. And there are, I constantly post on Instagram, the amazing people who are, who don't drink. So, and haven't drunk for years. Actually, just today, I saw there was an interview with Anne Hathaway on the Ellen show, where she said she's given up alcohol for 18 years, not because she had a big problem with alcohol, but because she didn't want to drink while she had a child at home. Because she said she'd woken up with a hangover and realized how difficult it made parenting, and what a substandard parent she was when she was drinking. So she came out sort of very publicly and said, I'm not drinking for 18 years, which is, so when people like Anne Hathaway start making that decision, and as I said, not because she had a major problem, but because she just thinks it's a better way to live, then that really changes the game.
Absolutely. And of course, for her children, growing up in an environment where alcohol isn't the go-to thing, that will have a huge impact on the kids as well. So,
and I think it's I really didn't want my children to believe that parents have to have wine or alcohol as a way of getting through the everyday ups and downs of life. And I was teaching them that it's normal to spend every evening with a glass in your hand. And I really, I didn't want them to grow up seeing that. There's another great quote by Brené Brown, which is, are you the adult you want your child to become? And, I wasn't the adult I wanted my children to become. And, I thought, how can I tell them how to live their lives when I'm showing them such a terrible example myself? So I think, that was one of my big motivations.
Absolutely. And I think kids can be beautiful motivations for adults, can't they? So I think that anyone listening, think about what the impact you're having on your children, because obviously that would be a really good motivator if you're on the fence about whether you can give up or not. But I'd love to dive deeper into when you understood that, when you realized, oh my God, this is my new purpose, my new career, because we're very much about purpose on the podcast of Kitty Talks. I truly believe every human being has a way that they can help and serve the planet. And my mission is to empower and encourage others to uncover their purpose so they can help our planet. So when did you kind of think, oh my God, I'm onto something here, and this is a new way of life and meaning for me?
It happened very gradually. So, people started saying to me through the blog, they were saying things like, I felt really alone until I read your story. And, I thought that life without alcohol would be miserable until, I came across your blog. And I started realizing, that all those feelings that I'd had, in the early days, I was helping other people with the same feelings all over the world. And that was an incredibly powerful thing. And just from telling my truth, just from speaking my telling my story. And so that led to people starting to say, why don't you turn the blog into a book? And I remember having a conversation with my husband where I said, look, people keep saying to me I should write a book, and what do you think? And I thought he'd go, oh my God, you can't possibly tell all your deepest secrets and our family's deepest secrets to the world. And he said, I think that's a really good idea. And I said, well, what happens if I get trolled, and what happens if people hate me? And he said, there will be ups and downs, but it will be an adventure. And don't we all need more adventure in our lives?
Oh, wonderful.
He's a good man most of the time.
I have to say, he sounded so lovely in the book. He just sounded such a gorgeous human being.
Oh, he is. I was lucky. I married my best friend, which was it was one of the wisest decisions I made. So I published the book, and then that led to me rediscovering really my love of writing, and I thought, well, maybe I should try fiction. So I started writing a novel, and the novel was very much inspired by all the experiences that I'd had. So it features an addict. It's all about what happens when you tell the truth about your life, and how so many of us sort of project this perfect face to the world, but underneath there's all sorts of stuff going wrong. And that comes out next year. So I can't remember what your original question was, but I think that was how my my
life unfolded.
Unfolded, and one thing led to another. And now, I look back to, when I was a child, my big love was reading and writing. And if you'd asked me then what I most wanted to be, I would have said, I want to be an author. I would love to write stories. And that's what I'm doing. And, I talked to the children the other day. I said something about, mummy's job. And they started laughing hysterically. And I said, what's so funny? And they said, you don't have a job, mummy. You make up stories. That's not a job. And I think that's the very best way to live your life, is by doing something that you love so much that is not a job. It earns me money, but it's not a job, it's a passion.
And that's an amazing role model to your kids, because, I think if, one of my missions is to get into schools and basically enable schools to sort of get them to teach children to uncover themselves. Like you said, that you really loved writing when you were younger, and then it kind of got lost in the sort of life as such. And obviously now you've come back to that. And, if we were all taught to uncover what it is we truly enjoy and are passionate about and go towards that, I think the world could be a very different place.
Yeah, I think we have this artificial split between hobbies and work, and if you can make one sway into the other, then that's the ideal. And it's funny, when you start drinking a lot, you lose some of your passions. You become very sort of, I say that when you use alcohol to rub to blur the edges in life, you blur all the good bits too. You dampen everything down. And, often when people quit drinking, they're left with this big hole. But what they use to fill the hole is a passion, often one that they've neglected. And I always say to people, look back to when you were a child, and what was it that made your heart sing? What made you jump out of bed in the morning with enthusiasm, and use that to plug the hole. And often, that turns into a whole new career. So, I've had letters from people there was a lovely one from a lady the other day who said that when she was a child, she used to love riding horses, but she hadn't ridden a horse for 20 years. And when she quit drinking, she started riding again. And now it's her passion, it's her job, it's, her whole life. And she never would have done that if she hadn't been through the process of overcoming addiction. I've had people who've taken up art or jewelry making or knitting, gardening, all sorts of things. And again, sort of used it as a stepping stone to a whole new career.
And I love the bit in the book because you talk about time, because it's so true, isn't it? You have so much more time that you actually can do these things that you're passionate about that you didn't have time for before. Like, I love the bit in the book where you described how you'd spring cleaned all the cupboards and chucked everything out, and the house had never was so more. Because I can totally relate to that. Our house is immaculate because you've just got more time at your disposal.
It's a displacement activity. You have more time, you have more energy, you have more sort of, because even if I hadn't drunk that much, I would still spend most Saturday and Sunday mornings feeling a little bit under par, and there is no hell worse than a soft play centre with small children and a hangover. So waking up, bouncing out of bed is a massive revelation.
And so wonderful that you've got all, like you were just describing, you can rediscover the things that you're passionate about. And obviously by you rediscovering what you were passionate about, it's blossomed into this amazing new career. And I can imagine how fulfilling it must be, because you must get tagged all the time in pictures of people with your book, or people sort of saying how your book's made a difference. And that just must be so, I would imagine, fulfilling for you.
Yeah, I mean, every day I get emails or messages on social media from people saying exactly that, and it sort of it makes it all worthwhile. And it's the incredible thing as well is that I was terrified before the book came out. I spent 3 nights not sleeping at all, and I thought, what if people hate it? What if they hate me? And and there have been one or two negative comments, and I've had some it's very low level sort of negativity. But it's amazing how supportive people are if you make yourself vulnerable. And I think whatever your issue is, feeling brave enough to put it out there, people will be nothing but supportive.
So what would you say, Claire, to someone who's listening to this, who's maybe still in the mindset of they're going to be missing out if they give up drinking? Talk to that person for me.
I know how they feel, because that's exactly how I felt. I thought that when I quit drinking, my whole life would be over. I thought that was it. I might
social
as well
reject.
sort of, and I thought, I thought, well, that's only fair. I've had lots of fun in the past, and this is payback time, and it's about time I became a grown up. And it's not like that at all, because the first few months are hard, and you just have to get through the early days and the early weeks, and and have faith that when you get to the other side, it will be amazing. And it really is. And everybody I speak to says the same. You get to about 100 days and things start getting miraculously better. So you'll find that you sleep better, you have more energy, you lose weight probably, you feel I'm a way better parent than I was. I'm more sort of patient and sympathetic. I'm more on the same wavelength as my children. It will change your whole life for the better, but it's just so not worth it when you compare it to all the positives of not drinking. So I would say, don't be scared, be excited, because you're at the beginning of a whole new life, and miraculous things will happen.
And what would you, because I do remember when the first time I quit drinking, I had to sort of relearn to socialize almost, because and it's interesting because now it doesn't faze me at all socializing without alcohol. But I do remember there was a point where I found it quite difficult because you just have never done it before. And then of course you get through that and you realize there's almost like an energy of a party you can feed off without the alcohol. There's kind of this kind of innate energy that lifts you anyway, especially if you're like me. I love people. But what would you say to someone approaching their first situation or social situation without alcohol? Any advice for them?
It is hard to start off with. And, I felt a bit like, if you've read Harry Potter, the ghosts in Harry Potter who are sort of there, like nearly headless Nick. They're there and they're part of it, but they're on a slightly different plane.
Yes.
I felt like that going into a party. I felt like I was on a different level from everybody else. And it was very awkward because, I'd spent, God knows, more than 20 years drinking at every single social event I ever went to. So it's bound to take a while to readjust. But there are things you can do to make it easier. So to start with, I would say don't go for very long. So, just go along until you start having fun and then leave. And the great thing about not drinking is you can drive,
So you leave whenever you want.
As soon as you want to leave, don't even bother saying goodbye, just get out. And the truth is that if everyone else is drinking, they won't even notice that you've gone because everyone is far too busy.
That's very good advice. Kind of, yeah, because if you announce that you're going, everyone goes, "Oh no, don't go," and then you feel awful.
Such a bore and just have a drink.
Yes.
So just go along, have lots of fun, talk to all the people you want to talk to, and then just go. And gradually I built up the amount of time I was spending at a party, and now I'm quite happy until 2:00 in the morning. But in the early days, I would be out of there at 11 p.m. and I would be in bed by midnight with a cup of hot chocolate and a good book, feeling really great about myself. And if it gets really tricky, just play it forward. There's a great sort of expression that addicts use about playing it forward, play the film forward. So, if you're thinking, should I just have one drink, then imagine what that one drink will lead to. Because, if you're like me, you don't just have one drink, you have one and then you have another one and then you have another one. And before you know it, you're talking rubbish and embarrassing yourself and drunk texting an ex-boyfriend or whatever it might be. And the next morning you'll wake up feeling miserable and hungover and hating yourself. And instead think about how great you'll feel the next day, waking up, completely hangover free with bags of energy and remembering a great night. So those are some of the, also, I find something else to drink. And there are so many fabulous alcohol alternatives now. There's no need to just stand there with a glass of tap water or orange juice. If there's not going to be a good alcohol-free alternative where you're going, then take something with you. And you can have an alcohol-free beer or a seed lip and tonic or, a mocktail, and there's no need to stand there with an empty glass, feeling ill at ease.
Yeah, I have to admit, I haven't got into non-alcoholic drinks yet. Like I know you talk about Beck's Blue in the book. So is that still your non-alcoholic drink of choice?
Well, back then it was about the only choice.
Sure.
Now there are so many different alternatives. It just goes to show how the alcohol-free lifestyle is really taking off because all the big supermarkets have a whole aisle now of alcohol-free drinks. Because, in the old days, the only thing you could drink if you weren't drinking alcohol was kids' drinks, like Coca-Cola and orange juice, and you felt a bit sort of, you felt like you were missing out. And so I always make myself at what was wine o'clock, I always make myself a special drink, and I sort of, and I sit there and I relax with my special drink in the way that I used to, but it doesn't have all the negatives associated with it.
Because there's non-alcohol gin and stuff like that. It's
yeah. And some people, it's not helpful for everybody. I think some people find that if they drink alcohol-free gin or alcohol-free wine, that it just makes them want the real thing.
Yes.
So they find it makes it harder, and some people like me find it makes it easier. So I think with all of these things, it's a case of, do what works for you. And if what works for you is not going to parties at all for the first month, then hell, it's only a month in the grand scheme of a whole life. So if you want to just stay at home and hole up with Netflix, then do that. It really doesn't matter.
Absolutely. That's really what I have to say. I like the glasses. Random, but I like, champagne glasses. I like wine glasses. So even just pouring an appetizer in a wine glass for me is quite satisfying.
Yeah, and you know what? It does trick your subconscious. So, because your subconscious is so used to associating a wine glass and an adult drink with a feeling of relaxation, that even when it's not alcoholic, you still get that feeling of relaxation because your subconscious is picking up all those cues. So, which is why it can be dangerous for some people also.
Sure.
But for me, I still feel slightly drunk if I drink a non-alcoholic drink, but a special one. It still makes me feel, relaxed and lightheaded.
Wonderful. So thank you so much. I know you've shared some amazing wisdom there in our interview today for people who are maybe on the fence, they want to give up, but not quite sure they can do it. So thank you so much. I know the interview will have empowered people. And I also know, for our listeners, you're all about finding your purpose. This is going to give you and create so much more time for you to reconnect to what it is you are truly passionate about. So where can people find you, Claire?
All over the place, actually. So my book, The Sober Diaries, is on Amazon, and it's available actually all over the world. My blog is called Mummy Was a Secret Drinker. So if you put that into Google, you'll find my blog easily. But I'm also on Facebook as Sober Mummy, and on Instagram as Claire_Pooley. So that's me.
Excellent. And we'll have all Claire's details in the show notes. So if you missed any of that, you will be able to connect with her. And please do go and say hello. And I highly recommend the book. The book's really, really good. You sometimes think, it might be a bit dull. It might be a bit boring. This is so fun. And really, I won't spoil it for you, but yes, it's a kind of roller coaster with a fantastic, deeper meaning. So yeah, thank you, Claire, for coming on. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with our audience.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show. I've really loved it.
We will see you next week with another amazing guest. Say goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. This podcast was sponsored by my Do Your Dharma course. Create a life so good that you pinch yourself. This 8-week online course demystifies Dharma and shows you how to tune in to why you're really here. Go to www.kittytalks.com/do your Dharma.